The cargo hauler Meridian's Hope had been transporting precious cargo across 3 star systems when the distress beacon activated. Captain Vrel, a towering Catharian with azure scales and 4 arms, stood on the bridge with his mandibles clicking in frustration. For 6 hours straight, a sound had been piercing through every deck, every corridor, every sealed chamber of his ship, a high-pitched, keening wail that made his translator implant vibrate painfully against his skull. The source was a small draconic youngling, no more than 2 solar cycles old, found drifting in an emergency pod near the Forgotten Nebula. Protocol demanded they rescue any survivors, but nobody had anticipated this. The little dragon, barely the size of a human child, was midnight blue with silver markings along its wings. It had been crying nonstop since they brought it aboard. "We've tried everything," First Officer Zinn reported, their gelatinous form rippling with exhaustion. Food, water, temperature adjustments, even sedatives. Nothing works. The medical bay says it's healthy, just distressed. Captain Vrel's translator struggled to process the creature's vocalizations. Most galactic species had moved beyond primitive sound-based communication centuries ago, relying instead on neural implants, pheromone signals, or the standardized galactic sign language that had united the cosmos. But this youngling had no implant, and dragons were notorious for their stubborn adherence to vocal communication. "Perhaps it's searching for its clutchmates," suggested Navigator Prex, a multi-eyed centurion. Draconic younglings are rarely separated from their family units. The crying intensified, and somewhere on Deck 3, something shattered. That's when Cora emerged from the human quarters. She was 19 standard years old, with dark curly hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and warm brown eyes that seemed too calm for someone who'd been listening to a dragon's distress for 6 hours. She wore the simple gray jumpsuit of a civilian passenger, traveling from Earth's outer colonies to the academic hub of Celestia Prime. "Captain," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the wailing. "May I try?" Vrel's translator caught the uncertainty in her tone, but also something else: determination. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years prior. They were considered curious, innovative, but often reckless. Still, what did he have to lose? "Proceed," he rumbled. Cora made her way to the cargo bay where they'd placed the youngling. The dragon was curled in a corner, its small body heaving with each cry, tears streaming from its golden eyes. Its wings were folded tight against its body, and its tail wrapped around itself. A posture of complete fear and isolation. The crew watched through the observation window as Cora approached slowly, carefully staying within the creature's line of sight. She didn't speak. Instead, she sat down cross-legged about 3 meters away and did something unexpected. She began to move her hands. Her fingers flowed through the air in deliberate, graceful patterns, the universal shapes of galactic sign language. The same language that had been developed by the deaf and hearing impaired of a dozen species, now used across 1,000 worlds for silent communication in space stations, noisy engine rooms, and diplomatic negotiations where implants were forbidden. "Hello," her hand said. "I see you. You are safe." The dragon's crying didn't stop immediately, but its golden eyes focused on Cora's moving hands. "You are frightened," Cora signed. "You are alone. I understand." The crew watched in stunned silence as the wailing began to diminish, replaced by hiccuping sobs. "How did she know?" whispered Zinn. Captain Vrel's research officer, a spider-like arachnus named Kelix, pulled up data on his holographic display. "Accessing Draconic Biology Database. Captain, according to this, approximately 3% of draconic younglings are born with auditory processing disorders. Their vocal communication develops normally, but their hearing..." Kelix's multiple eyes widened. "They can't hear themselves or others. They cry because they're isolated in silence." On the cargo bay floor, Cora continued signing. "My name is Cora. What is your name?" The little dragon's crying had reduced to soft whimpers, its head tilted, watching her hands with intense focus. Then slowly, clumsily, it lifted one small clawed hand and made a shape. "Ember," it signed back. Cora's face broke into a brilliant smile. "Hello, Ember. You have a beautiful name." "Where is my mother?" The dragon signed, its movements shaky and unpracticed. "Where is my clutch? Why am I alone?" Cora's hands moved with careful gentleness. "I don't know where your family is, but we found you in the dark. We brought you here to keep you safe. You are not alone anymore. I called and called, Ember signed, fresh tears rolling down its scaled cheeks. Nobody answered. Nobody came. I thought I was abandoned. You weren't abandoned, Cora signed firmly. You are precious. You are wanted. And I can hear you now. The dragon youngling's eyes, those ancient golden eyes, locked onto Cora's face. Then it moved, carefully unfolding itself and crawling across the deck plating. When it reached Cora, it pressed its small head against her chest and wrapped its tail around her waist. For the first time in 6 hours, there was silence on the Meridian's Hope. Captain Vrel found Cora in the observation lounge later that cycle, Ember curled up asleep in her lap, one of the dragon's hands still clutching hers. How did you know? He asked. Cora looked up, stroking Ember's head gently. My little brother is deaf. Born that way. When he was young, before he learned sign language, he used to cry just like that. This desperate, continuous sound because he was trapped in silence and couldn't understand why no one was responding to him. The moment I heard Ember, I recognized it. Galactic sign language was created by your people and the Velusians together, Captain Vrel noted. Actually, Cora corrected politely, humans have been using sign language for thousands of years. Dozens of different versions across our world. When we joined the galactic community, we discovered other species had similar languages. It was one of the first things we truly shared. The understanding that communication isn't just about sound or implants. It's about connection. Kellex had traced Ember's pod trajectory and discovered the youngling's colony ship had suffered catastrophic failure 3 weeks prior. Most escaped, but Ember's pod had malfunctioned, sending it spiraling into the nebula. The Draconic Conclave was contacted, and they were sending a representative to retrieve Ember at Celestia Prime. For the remaining 4 days of the journey, Ember rarely left Cora's side. She taught the youngling more signs, played simple games using hand gestures, and told stories through elaborate finger movements that made Ember's eyes light up with wonder. When they finally docked at Celestia Prime, a delegation of draconic adults was waiting. Among them was a female dragon with the same midnight blue scales and silver markings, Ember's mother, who had been searching frantically through 3 systems. The reunion was tearful, but before Ember left with her clutch, the youngling turned back to Cora and signed carefully. Thank you for hearing me when I had no voice, Cora signed back. You always had a voice. You just needed someone who spoke your language. The story of the human girl who calmed a crying dragon spread through the galactic networks like wildfire. But for those who'd witnessed it firsthand, it became something more. A reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their warfare or their stubborn determination. It was their instinct to reach across the void, to find connection in silence, and to ensure that no one, no matter how small, no matter how different, was ever truly alone. Years later, Ember would grow to become one of the first draconic ambassadors fluent in over 40 sign languages, both human and alien. And every treaty she signed, every conflict she helped resolve through silent, graceful communication, she dedicated to the human girl who had first taught her that being different wasn't being broken. It was simply being yourself in a universe vast enough to hold infinite ways of speaking. And sometimes, the most powerful words were the ones that made no sound at all.